Howdy, everyone, and it's Jess. Today we are going to be talking about my relationship with my mother and how that was. Um, at a young age, I know I don't remember a lot early on. I know we were at my grandparents' house until the house that she's still in got fixed up. And then we moved there. I initially had visitations with my dad there until he got his shit figured out. Um, she worked at KFC and had a job there for a while to support me. And that's where she met my stepdad. Um, that's kind of why I have a KFC is my comfort food, unfortunately. Um, so there's that. Uh, but I remember being in that building a lot, um, just kind of hanging out. The other employees being nice to me. I remember when there was the smoking still allowed in the building, like the smoking room and the not smoking. Um, and then she got a job at a foundry in the office. Um, and then I was going to school. Um, so I would wake up in the morning where both my mom and stepdad went to the same job, did different things. But they got up at the same time, brought me to daycare at like 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning. And then I'd get on the bus shortly after that. And I'd be at school an hour and a half later. Um, During the summer, they would work an extra hour because I didn't have school, so they could go in an hour earlier. Um, but at the daycare I went to, all of the other kids were school teacher kids, so there were no other kids there that weren't babies. Um, so because the parents that were teachers were taking all their toddlers and other kids out on vacations and leaving the babies at daycare. Um, so I didn't really have friends there. I had one, the daycare provider's granddaughter. She would occasionally be there and we'd hang out. But for the most part, it was just me. Um, then eventually, once daycare got too expensive because my sisters had to go instead of me because I was old enough to not need it. I think I was like 13 or so, maybe 10, 12, I don't know, middle school age. Um, they stopped taking me there and I started going to my grandparents instead. Um, where I would get dropped off there really early in the morning. My grandma would make me usually toast and almost always some expired chocolate milk. I would watch the news, read some comics, maybe do some Sudoku, then get on the bus, and then ride that for another hour and a half. I think that one might have been an hour and 50. Can't remember. Then I'd get home. My mom would immediately either, depending on what age I was, when I was younger, like the ages of, I would say, I want to say 5 to 8, she did chores like laundry and stuff pretty consistently. But after that, it was more about just kind of hanging out with my stepdad. After work, they would go and hang out in the basement. They had a bar down there with like a TV hooked up. They'd have drinks, smoke, whatever. I wasn't allowed down there. So I didn't really, it would just, we'd get home. I would immediately get put onto chores. And they'd be in the basement for 30 minutes, 2 hours, don't know. Could be any amount of time. And then I also remember a lot growing up, just almost at least every month, there was some form of like get together or party with their friends. Or like every couple months, there was a concert that they were going to where I would have to go to grandma's and like stay the night or some shit. Where it was just like they were always going out and partying and having fun as a couple, but never really spending time as a family doing things that you would expect. They were forcing the monotony, forcing the chores, forcing the dinners, all of that. They were forcing it. I especially remember a lot as a kid going to like zoos and things like that. And I don't know if as a kid I said I wanted to, but I, looking back on it, I don't really think that that's what I wanted because I can tell looking at myself in those moments, that's not what I wanted. I Every time my parents asked me what I wanted, I didn't tell them. Not because I knew I wouldn't get it, but it's because I've already told them and not gotten it, and been told that I'm not going to. Once I got to be around the age where you don't need to be buying kids toys anymore to entertain themselves inside, and you can just chuck them outside and unsupervised and say play outside, you lose a lot of your ability to know what's going on. Kind of lost what I was doing with that, but the cat. But my my mom never really my parents never really listened at the young age when I told them that I wanted to play with them. I would always tell them that, like, they would always tell me to go play outside and be like, "Can you come with me?" And they'd say no. And I would always ask them to play with me, and they would say no. And then they would always give some reason, excuse, this is how the world works, yada, yada, yada. Um, well, it then got to the point where if I can't have the one thing I want, why? Why bother with anything else? Um, so I think after that, my mom really, really tried to fill the void of her lack of parenting through consumerism by going over the top on every holiday. Um, to the point where I knew as a kid that we were not well off. We didn't have a lot of money. Like, I knew we were renting the house we were living in from my grandparents and that we weren't paying rent like half the time. So that kind of makes me question now why my parents were always going to concerts and all this shit. Um, but I every Christmas, like Thanksgiving, birthday, Easter, any time that she could get you a big gift or show you that she loves you by buying you stuff, she would do it. I know I always got the largest Easter basket. I always had the largest stocking. I almost always had the most gifts. But it always felt like it was for show. It always felt like it was to make up for something. Because it was always done, like, in front of everyone. As like a, look at me, look what I'm doing for you. Never as a, I got this for you because I was thinking of you. Always, look at how generous I'm being, everyone. Um, and I know that's why I, as a kid, fell into like video games and just all of that. Like, um, like wanting to really, really sink into the digital world. Luckily, I grew up in a place where that couldn't happen really because there wasn't really internet. Um, but um, my mom always blamed her job on why she never spent time with me. and why she was a bad mom. But coming, being the age I am now, and having had an adult relationship with her and seeing who she is as an adult, I think I see why she was doing what she was doing and why she was so unprepared. Um, I don't think she ever wanted me, or at the very least, not at the age that she had me. Um, with what I'm seeing and how she's raising her last kid in her house, I don't know if she ever wanted kids at all. Um, she recently divorced my stepdad. One of my sisters is still living in that house, and my mom is still just out partying, not really at home. The house is a mess. Um, my sister is barely at home, and I confronted her about it, and she basically told me that it's summer and she doesn't want to spend time inside doing chores because it's summer. And that's kind of a bullshit excuse. You have a kid. You need to be taking care of your kid. That is your first priority. Um, I you have all this time to go out to restaurants, all this time to spend time with your other boyfriend, all this time to go out to the beach. You have time to spend at home with your daughter. You have time to spend at home to give her a clean home. Quit the bullshit. You had time to give me a clean home. I didn't need to grow up in a black mold infested home my entire life. I didn't need to figure out that the asthma I had as a kid was because of that. I didn't need to figure out that moving back into that home for a couple weeks and getting that asthma back because the black mold is still there and only gotten worse. I didn't need to figure it out that way. I didn't need to see the cushions from, I think, an old sectional that we used to have, still in the basement, covered in mildew. But you're trying to say it's from the couch that you have down there that is being used. Um, I You can't buy your kids love. You only get what you give. And if you didn't give anything in the beginning, you're not going to get anything in the end.